The rain hammered against the glass walls of the office as I sat frozen, staring at the dismissal letter in my trembling hands. Richard said, "You've become a liability, and I can't keep dead weight here." His cold words sliced deeper than the paper. My pulse roared in my ears as disbelief turned into raw anger. How could he erase years of dedication with a single stroke? Emily, my closest colleague, whispered, "This isn't fair, you gave everything." My throat burned, but no words came, only a silent scream clawing at my chest. Richard adjusted his tie, smugness radiating as if my downfall was his triumph. He stood tall in his polished suit, a predator savoring the kill. I wanted to lunge, to shout, but I felt trapped, shackled by humiliation. My mind replayed late nights, sacrifices, victories that now meant nothing. In that suffocating silence, betrayal crushed me, but under the weight, something darker sparked. Revenge whispered from the shadows, promising fire where despair had settled. That single moment became the fracture, the shattering blow that would ignite everything to come. I clenched the letter, eyes blazing at Richard, and thought, "You've just created your greatest enemy." I stumbled into the rainy street outside, the city lights blurring through my tears. Emily said, "Don't let him break you, John." Her words barely pierced the storm inside me. My shoes splashed through puddles as I walked aimlessly, soaked and hollow. I thought of every night I stayed late, every moment I sacrificed for loyalty that meant nothing. Richard's smug face haunted me with every step. The neon glow of the city mocked my despair, each light a reminder of promises turned to ashes. My reflection in a dark shop window looked like a stranger, eyes burning but lost, jaw clenched against the collapse threatening to consume me. My fists tightened, nails digging into my palms until pain became a comfort. I whispered, "This is not the end, it's the beginning." The storm above seemed to answer, thunder cracking like a vow. That night, drenched and broken, a seed of fire was planted deep inside. At my apartment, silence swallowed me whole. I sat on the couch, the letter crumpled beside me like discarded skin. Emily's voice echoed in memory, "Don't let him break you." My chest heaved with rage and sorrow as I replayed Richard's every word. The shadows on the wall looked like bars of a cage. My reflection in the window stared back, hollow and furious. I thought of my family, of promises I couldn't keep, and shame burned deeper than fear. My phone buzzed. Emily's message, "Stay strong, I believe in you." My hand trembled as I typed, then stopped. Words felt powerless. I whispered into the silence, "He stole everything from me. I'll take everything from him." My voice sounded alien, darker, sharper. It was the first time the thought of revenge was not just a whisper, but a vow. Sleep never came. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding like war drums. Every breath tasted like ashes. Richard's sneer appeared in the cracks of darkness. Emily's worried face flickered in my thoughts. Anger swelled, rising like a storm tide, drowning every softer feeling. I sat up suddenly, sweating, gasping, the room spinning. I grabbed the letter again, my nails tearing its edges. "No," I hissed, "I won't be forgotten. He'll pay." The night became my witness. The silence, once suffocating, now felt like a co-conspirator. I saw Richard's empire crumble in my mind, piece by piece. A fire had been born, and there was no putting it out. By dawn, I stood at the window, staring at the bleeding sunrise through the storm's aftermath. The city glistened with rain, streets slick and shimmering like broken glass. My reflection glared back at me, not weak anymore but hardened, sharpened. Emily's message still blinked on my phone, unread, but her faith lingered in my chest. Richard thought he had buried me, but he had only planted a weapon. "You'll regret this," I whispered to the horizon. My voice carried weight, a promise carved in steel. I felt the fire coursing through me now, stronger than despair, hungrier than fear. The first step toward revenge had already been taken, not in action, but in resolve. The next morning I dragged myself to a small diner on the edge of the city, its neon sign buzzing faintly in the gray drizzle. Emily said, "You look like you didn't sleep, John." I muttered, "Sleep's for men who haven't lost everything." Her eyes softened, but her silence carried 1,000 words. I stirred my coffee without drinking, staring into its black swirl, as if it could tell me how to rebuild my life. The rain tapped the diner's window, each drop a reminder of time dripping away. The waitress smiled politely, but pity lingered in her glance. Emily whispered, "Richard thinks you're finished. Prove him wrong." Her words pierced my fog, sparking the faintest ember. I clenched my jaw, feeling the weight of her faith. My voice cracked as I said, "If I rise again, it won't be as the same man. It'll be as something stronger, something sharper." The thought of revenge pulsed like a heartbeat beneath my despair. Later that day, I walked through the park, the drizzle soaking the pathways, leaves clinging to my shoes. I passed families laughing under umbrellas, their joy a cruel reminder of my hollow state. Emily's words echoed, "Prove him wrong." I clenched my fists, each step heavier than the last. My thoughts raced back to Richard, his smirk, his arrogance, his empire built on deceit. A jogger brushed past me, breaking my trance, and I muttered, "I won't be invisible anymore." My reflection in the puddle looked older, harder, as though overnight I had aged with fury. I whispered to the empty air, "He took my job, but he won't take my dignity." For the first time since that night, I stood tall, rain streaking my face like war paint. That evening, Emily visited my apartment, carrying a folder. She dropped it on the table and said, "You need to see this." I hesitated, then opened it, scanning documents that exposed Richard's hidden dealing. My breath caught as I whispered, "He's been laundering money." Emily nodded, her face pale but determined. "He buried his mistakes under others' ruin," she said softly. My chest burned with rage. Every page was proof that my firing wasn't incompetence but strategy to protect his secrets. I slammed the folder shut, my voice trembling. "He destroyed me to save himself." Emily whispered, "Now you know where to start." In that moment, the path became clear. Revenge was no longer a fantasy. It was a mission. I couldn't sleep again. Instead, I sat at the table, folder open, documents spread like weapons. Every line revealed Richard's rot, every signature his arrogance. Emily had gone home, but her words stayed. "Now you know where to start." My fingers traced the ink, as if I could burn the lies into memory. My reflection in the window looked like a man reborn from ashes. I whispered, "You tried to bury me, Richard, but I'll turn your dirt into chains." The city's glow seeped through the blinds, painting my face half in light, half in shadow. That night, I stopped being a victim. I became a hunter preparing for war. The following day, I found myself outside Richard's office tower. Its steel and glass pierced the sky like a monument to corruption. My reflection warped in the mirrored walls, reminding me of the man I was, and the one I was becoming. I whispered, "This is where it ends for you." People bustled around me, blind to the storm brewing in my chest. Emily called, her voice steady, "Be careful, John." I answered, "Careful was the man he fired. This one isn't." The phone clicked, silence filling me with fire. I lifted my gaze, eyes burning at the tower. I knew the battle had begun. The next night, I sat with Emily in the back booth of a dimly lit bar, the air thick with smoke and murmurs of strangers. She slid a USB drive across the table and whispered, "This is everything I could pull on Richard's accounts." My fingers hesitated before gripping it, the weight feeling heavier than steel. "With this he's vulnerable," I said, my voice low and edged with fury. Emily's eyes darted nervously, as if shadows could be listening. "Be careful, John. Men like him don't fall without a fight," she warned. I smirked bitterly. "Then it's time he learns. I don't scare easy anymore." My heart pounded, not from fear but from the first taste of power. For months, I had been prey. Tonight, I felt the hunter stirring within me. Back at my apartment, I plugged the USB into my laptop, the screen flickering to life with files that exposed Richard's corruption in chilling detail. Numbers, shell companies, offshore accounts, his empire built on lies. My pulse quickened as I whispered, "Got you." The glow of the screen lit my face, half devoured by darkness. I scribbled notes furiously, mapping out connections like a spider weaving its web. Every name linked to Richard became a target, every transaction a weapon waiting to be used. My world had narrowed into a single mission, and the thought filled me with savage clarity. Richard thought he had buried me. He didn't realize he had planted a weapon forged in betrayal. Days later, I followed Richard's enforcer, a looming shadow of a man named Victor, through the city streets. He was the kind of brute who spoke with fists more than words. I trailed him at a distance, blending into the crowd. Victor's loyalty was absolute, but his patterns were predictable. He visited the same underground club, met the same people, left at the same time each night. I whispered to myself, even giants have cracks. My palms sweated as I watched him from across the street, memorizing his routes. For the first time I realized that to reach Richard, I would need to cut through Victor. He was the wall, and I would be the storm. Emily paced in my apartment, her hands wringing as she said, "This is dangerous, John. Victor isn't just a bodyguard. He's Richard's hammer." I leaned against the window, staring down at the city, my voice steady. "Hammers can break, Emily. I just need the right pressure." Her eyes filled with fear, but I saw something else flicker, belief. She whispered, "Don't lose yourself in this war." My chest tightened, but I masked it with a sharp grin. Richard already took everything I was. Now, I'll decide what I become. In that silence, Emily saw the man I was becoming. Not the broken worker Richard discarded, but something darker, sharper, more dangerous. The first strike came small, almost invisible. I sent anonymous leaks of Richard's financial dealings to a local journalist, carefully chosen lines that wouldn't expose me but would shake his foundation. I watched the news that evening as the anchor said, "Sources suggest irregularities in the accounts of prominent businessman, Richard Hale." My lips curled into a bitter smile. Richard's face appeared on the screen, his polished confidence strained, his eyes betraying a flicker of unease. I whispered, "That's the beginning, Richard. Just the beginning." For the first time in weeks I felt alive, not as prey, but as the storm gathering at his doorstep. The next morning, headlines blazed with Richard's name, linked to financial scandals. I sat in the cafe corner watching strangers whisper as they read the news. Emily said, "He's cracking, John." I muttered, "Not enough." My coffee cooled untouched as I scanned Richard's furious press statement on my phone. His words were polished, but his eyes in the photo betrayed unease. I whispered, "That's the first dent in his armor." Emily leaned closer, her voice low, "Be careful, he'll strike back." I smiled bitterly, "Good, let him. I've been waiting." Every beat of my heart felt sharper now, no longer despair, but the rhythm of battle. That night, I followed Victor again. His stride was steady, his presence terrifying, but his patterns were cracks in his armor. He entered the underground club, a den of neon shadows and pounding bass. I stayed outside watching as he laughed with men who looked as dangerous as he did. My fists clenched, rage burning hotter. I whispered, "Every fortress has a gate." When he finally left, I trailed him down the wet streets, memorizing his path. He was Richard's shield, but even shields can shatter. My eyes narrowed, calculating not if, but when I would strike. Emily stormed into my apartment the next day, her voice sharp. "You're getting reckless, John." I turned from the desk piled with documents, my jaw tight. "Reckless wins wars," I snapped. She slammed her hand on the table, eyes blazing, "Or it gets you killed." Silence thickened between us, the storm of loyalty and fear clashing. I softened for a moment, whispering, "I need this, Emily. I can't stop now." She sighed, collapsing into a chair, her voice trembling. "Just promise me you'll come back from this. Don't let revenge swallow you whole." I couldn't promise her that, not yet. That evening I tested Richard's defenses further. From a payphone, I called one of his partners anonymously, hinting at secrets buried in their accounts. Panic bled through the man's voice, and I smiled as I hung up. Power surged through me, the kind I had never tasted before. For every step Richard had taken to bury me, I was clawing 10 back. I whispered, "You built your throne on lies, Richard. Now I'll turn those lies into fire." The city lights blurred around me as I walked away, my heart pounding with grim satisfaction. But Richard wasn't idle. News broke that one of his rivals had been arrested overnight, framed by planted evidence. Emily called me, her voice shaking. "He's sending a message, John. He knows someone's after him." I stared at the skyline from my apartment window, rage boiling hotter. "Good," I said coldly. "Then he knows I'm coming." Lightning cracked over the city, echoing the war drums in my chest. For the first time it felt like the board was set, the pieces moving into place. This wasn't just survival anymore. It was war. Emily arrived at my apartment late at night, her hands shaking as she held another folder. "You need to see this, John," she whispered. I flipped it open and froze. Inside were records, emails, and contracts. My breath hitched as I realized the victim Richard had framed years ago wasn't just a stranger. It was my brother, Daniel. My chest tightened, rage colliding with grief. "He ruined Daniel's life," I muttered, voice raw. Emily's eyes filled with tears. "He destroyed more than yours, John. He's been covering this for years." I felt the ground vanish beneath me. It wasn't just about my job anymore. It was about blood, family, and justice for someone who never got it. I staggered to the window, folder in hand, Daniel's name burning in my mind. He had vanished from my life years ago, his downfall a wound I could never explain. Now the truth screamed from the pages. Emily whispered, "He was the first victim, John. You were just the next." My reflection stared back at me, haunted, furious. A man born from betrayal. "Richard didn't just fire me," I said through gritted teeth. "He destroyed my family." The words echoed, heavy as thunder. For the first time, revenge was no longer mine alone. It was a legacy I had to finish. Emily sat across from me, her voice trembling. "Daniel tried to expose Richard years ago. He was silenced, discredited, ruined." My stomach twisted, memories of Daniel's despair crashing back. I muttered, "He begged for help, and I didn't see it. I thought he failed, but Richard made him fail." Emily touched my hand gently, her voice steady. "This isn't just revenge anymore. This is justice for Daniel." Tears burned my eyes, but I blinked them away, replacing pain with fire. "Then justice will roar," I whispered. My brother's ghost stood behind every word. That night, I returned to the files, my hands trembling less with grief and more with focus. Every line Daniel had once gathered became part of my arsenal. His unfinished fight was now mine. I whispered into the silence, "I'll finish what you started, brother." The city outside rumbled with traffic, but I only heard war drums. Richard thought he erased Daniel's truth, but he only buried it beneath paper and lies. Now I held the shovel. Emily said softly, "If you go through with this, there's no turning back." I answered, "I never planned on turning back." The next morning, news broke of Richard scrambling to control the leaks. I stood at the rooftop of my building, folder in hand, the wind whipping against me. For the first time, I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was carrying Daniel's voice, his truth, his justice. "You took him from me," I growled into the wind. "Now I'll take everything from you." The city spread beneath me like a battlefield waiting for the first strike. Lightning cracked far in the distance, as if the world itself had heard my vow. I walked into Richard's office tower, heart pounding like war drums, folder clutched beneath my arm. The lobby gleamed with marble and glass, but to me it was a fortress of lies. Security guards eyed me, but I moved with purpose, my steps steady. Emily's voice echoed from our last call. "This is dangerous, John." I whispered under my breath, "Danger is the only language he understands." As I approached the elevator, I caught my reflection in the polished steel. Not the broken man who was fired, but someone harder, forged in betrayal. Every nerve screamed with tension, but resolve steadied me. Today, it ends. The elevator doors opened, and Victor was waiting. His massive frame blocked the corridor like a wall of muscle. He smirked. "You should have stayed buried, John." My pulse quickened, but I stood tall. "Tell Richard his lies are done," I snapped. Victor's smirk twisted into a snarl. He lunged, his fists like thunder. I ducked, the folder clattering against the wall as we clashed. His strength was brutal, each punch rattling the air, but rage fueled me. This wasn't just survival, this was retribution. My knuckles split against his jaw, pain igniting fire instead of fear. Victor slammed me against the wall, his voice a growl. "Richard owns everything, including you." I spat blood and hissed, "Not anymore." With a surge of fury, I drove my fist into his ribs, forcing him back. The hallway echoed with the violence of our struggle, each blow a war drum. My body ached, but the thought of Daniel's face drove me harder. Victor staggered, clutching his side, rage burning in his eyes. I shouted, "You're just a weapon, Victor. And every weapon breaks." His roar filled the corridor as he charged again, but I no longer felt fear, only fire. With one desperate strike, I drove Victor into the glass wall. It shattered around us, shards raining down like frozen fire. He collapsed, groaning, his breath ragged. I staggered, chest heaving, my knuckles split and burning. The world blurred, but victory felt near. I picked up the folder, my voice trembling but strong. "Tell Richard he's next." Victor's eyes flickered with reluctant respect, as though he finally saw me not as prey, but as a rival who wouldn't break. I turned, leaving him in the wreckage, my resolve sharper than the glass that crunched underfoot. Finally, I entered Richard's office. He stood by the window, skyline glowing behind him, sipping whiskey with forced calm. "John," he said smoothly, "I wondered how long before you'd crawl back." I threw the folder onto his desk, papers spilling like confessions. "This isn't crawling," I growled. "This is justice." Richard's eyes narrowed, his mask cracking. For the first time, I saw fear beneath his polished arrogance. "You think you can take me down?" he sneered. I leaned closer, voice sharp as a blade. "Not think. No." The silence between us was electric, the storm finally face to face. Richard's office fell into silence after my words, the storm of years crashing between us. He laughed bitterly. "You think a few papers can topple me? I own this city." I slammed my fist on the desk, papers scattering. "No, Richard. The truth owns you now." His mask faltered, his composure trembling as he glanced at the folder. "Daniel tried this," he sneered, "and look what happened to him." My rage boiled over. "Daniel didn't lose, Richard. You just delayed his justice." His glass slipped from his hand, whiskey splashing across the carpet like spilled blood. For the first time, he looked small. Richard snarled, "You're no better than me. You want power just like I do." I stepped closer, voice low and sharp. "No, I want justice, and that terrifies you." Emily burst into the office, breathless, holding her phone. "It's Liv, John. The leaks are everywhere." Richard's face drained of color. He grabbed the folder desperately, but his empire was already burning outside these walls. I whispered, "Your lies are ashes now." His hands trembled, eyes darting like a trapped animal. The predator had become prey, and I was the shadow closing in. Victor stumbled in, bloodied and bruised, glaring at me through narrowed eyes. "He's not worth it, John," Emily whispered, clutching my arm. Richard shouted, "Victor, stop him!" But for the first time, Victor hesitated. His eyes burned with loyalty, but his body sagged with defeat. He spat on the floor and growled, "I'm done cleaning up your mess, Richard." The room froze as Richard's last shield walked away, leaving him naked before the storm. I stepped forward, voice low and steady. "Even your hammer broke, Richard. You stand alone now." His silence was louder than thunder. I grabbed Richard by his collar, dragging him across the desk. His polished arrogance shattered as he begged, "You don't know what you're doing, John." My face hovered inches from his, voice shaking with fury and grief. "You took my brother. You tried to take me. Now I take everything from you." Emily's voice cut through the rage. "John, don't cross that line." My grip trembled, the weight of vengeance warring with the last shreds of humanity inside me. Richard's eyes widened, fear stark in his polished mask. The world seemed to hold its breath. I released him, shoving him back into his chair. "The world will destroy you, Richard. Not my hands, theirs," I said, voice like steel. Emily's eyes filled with relief, though her body trembled. Richard slumped, broken, the folder glowing like judgment before him. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, the city's justice finally closing in. I turned toward the door, my voice steady. "Daniel's fight is finished." Lightning lit the skyline as I walked into the storm. Behind me, Richard's empire crumbled. Ahead of me, silence carried my brother's voice. The war was over.